Have you ever actually stopped to think about what connects the massive fire-breathing furnaces that pump out industrial steel to your own personal ability to see in the dark? It sounds crazy, right? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to trace the absolutely unbelievable double life of a single element. We're going to look at how humanity literally rips it out of the earth using extreme heat and electricity, and then we'll discover how our very own biology uses that exact same heavy metal to build our eyes, shape our brains, and basically keep our bodies from failing. So the main character of our journey today is element number 30 on the periodic table. And, for an element that is so heavily utilized all over the globe, it kind of hides in plain sight in a lot of our daily lives. At its core, zinc is a white-silver transition metal. Its density sits at about 7.13 grams per cubic centimeter, and its main oxidation state is Zn2+. But rather than getting bogged down in textbook stats, what really matters for our story today is how it behaves. It turns to liquid at 420 degrees Celsius, and commercially, well, its most famous job is taking the hit to protect steel from corrosion at room temperature. It's the ultimate chemical bodyguard. But here's the thing, you can't just walk outside and pick up a chunk of pure zinc from the ground. While native pure zinc has been found very rarely in places like Australia, practically all of it is trapped inside minerals. Our main sources are zinc blende, which is also known as fullerite, and marmoset. And this presents a massive industrial headache. These ores usually only contain something like 5 to 15% actual metal. The rest of it, it's literally just rock and sulfur. Yet somehow we mine and produce a staggering 9 million tons of it every single year. So how exactly do we get that massive amount of pure metal out of such low-grade rocks? Well, that brings us to method 1, extraction by fire, or in scientific terms, pyrometallurgy. To turn that raw, crushed stone into a shining metal, the zinc blende powder has to survive 3 brutal stages. First, flotation. Second, roasting, and third, smelting. Let's walk through how this flows. First, the crushed ore goes through a process called froth flotation, often using copper sulfate, just to bump that metal concentration up to at least 50%. Then comes the roasting stage. They blast oxygen through the concentrated sulfide ore to strip away the sulfur dioxide. And what is absolutely incredible here is that this chemical reaction is exothermic. It literally generates its own immense heat, driving the temperature all the way up to a searing 700 to 1,000 degrees Celsius. By the end of this roasting, our zinc sulfide has been transformed into zinc oxide. Next, the zinc oxide drops into a towering blast furnace for smelting. Right alongside carbon and limestone, oxygen is pumped in from the top to create carbon monoxide. Now, inside this furnace, temperatures reach an incredible 1,300 degrees Celsius. At this kind of extreme heat, a fascinating phase change happens. The carbon strips the oxygen away, and the zinc doesn't just melt. Actually, scratch that, it vaporizes. It literally becomes a metal gas. But then you have a new problem. How do you catch a metal gas? It requires a pretty serious metallurgical trick. This zinc vapor, which is sitting at around 1,000 degrees Celsius, is rapidly cooled down to 550 degrees inside a bath of, get this, molten lead. Because zinc is denser, it just sinks right to the bottom of the lead pool, where it can be tapped off as a liquid. After that, they redistill it to boil off any lingering impurities like cadmium. But playing with fire isn't the only way to get the job done. Let's look at method 2, refining by electricity, or hydrometallurgy. Instead of blast furnaces, this method is a highly controlled, incredibly precise liquid sequence. It goes like this: leaching, purification, electrolysis, and finally melting and casting. So the crude zinc oxide is dissolved, or leached, in dilute sulfuric acid. This creates a liquid solution of zinc sulfate and water. Once this liquid is meticulously filtered and purified, it is primed and ready for the magic of electricity. During the electrolysis stage, that zinc sulfate solution sits between a very specific set of metal plates. You've got an anode made of lead mixed with 1% silver and a cathode made of pure aluminum. When they flip the current on, oxygen gas bubbles off the anode, and pure zinc literally materializes right out of the liquid, depositing directly onto that aluminum cathode. It's like watching a solid form out of thin air. The sulfuric acid is perfectly regenerated at the anode, so it can be used again, and that pure zinc is periodically stripped off the aluminum plates to be melted down into ingots. So why do both? The crucial point here is the difference in the final product.
The fire method, pyrometallurgy, gives you zinc that is about 98.5% pure, and today that makes up roughly 15% of global production. But the electrical method, hydrometallurgy, that produces zinc that is an astonishing 99.995% pure. We're talking highly refined, industrial-grade perfection.
Okay, so we've talked about giant blast furnaces, vats of sulfuric acid, and millions of tons of industrial ingots. But I want you to completely shift gears with me here. We are leaving the heavy industry behind, and we are zooming way, way down into the microscopic world inside your own cells. Because the big question is, why does this exact same heavy industrial element matter to your eyes? Well, it turns out your biology needs zinc just as much as a steel refinery does. Inside your body, zinc acts as an absolutely critical biological mediator. Think of your liver as a dispatch center for vitamin A. To move vitamin A around, your body has to build a specific transport vehicle called retinol binding protein. Without zinc, that assembly line completely shuts down. Furthermore, just for you to process light, an enzyme called retinol dehydrogenase steps in to convert retinol into retinaldehyde. And guess what? That enzyme is fully 100% dependent on zinc to do its job.
Which brings us to a really fascinating medical crossover. If you know a bit about nutrition, you probably know that the hallmark sign of a vitamin A deficiency is nightlightness. But because of this intricate molecular dance we just talked about, you can actually suffer from night blindness purely from a zinc deficiency. Zinc physically binds to the transmembrane segment of rhodopsin, which is the light-sensitive receptor protein in your eyes. If you lack this industrial metal, your night vision literally breaks down at a structural level. And the biological stakes? They get even higher than our vision. When looking at the impacts of zinc deficiency during pregnancy, the consequences are honestly profound. In laboratory studies on rats, severe zinc deficiency literally caused the failure to conceive at all. And when conception did occur, it led to stark abnormalities in blastocyst development right at the very beginning of life. Looking at the later stages of fetal development, lacking element 30 doesn't just cause minor hiccups. It leads to a high incidence of severe deformities in the brain, the skull, limbs, eyes, heart, and lungs. Even just a low zinc intake during the third trimester, when the main stages of differentiation are totally complete, can result in a low birth weight and a prolonged, difficult delivery. Think about that for a second. The exact same element we smelt at 1300 degrees to coat our steel is fundamentally required to properly form a human heart and brain. Which leaves us with this incredible paradox to wrap up our explainer today. How amazing is it that the exact same element that protects our skyscrapers and our bridges from rusting away is simultaneously weaving through our bloodstream, ensuring babies develop properly and allowing our eyes to pierce the darkness? Element 30 is for sure not just an industrial commodity, it's a foundational pillar of life itself. So the next time you see a piece of galvanized steel, ask yourself, what other hidden biological secrets are locked inside the everyday materials all around us?